Well, thank you. I want to thank the panel for a wonderful presentation. And Ms. Castellane, I think my 5-year-old son will actually say I did something cool today.
Yes.
He has his bucket of cars. So
Good.
yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I guess one of the things that I want to ask actually all of you is that I mean, we started off by talking about the fact that no one knew who the costume designer. We all recognized the characters. To to reaching out to youth and underserved areas. To the toys that really get our kids excited, and then they go, oh, I have to do my homework now.
Yeah.
And so part of me is also trying to think about, and I know you were teachers, trying to figure out how do we build that connection? Certainly during the recession, our school districts, we had to make budget cuts and so forth. A lot of people kind of slimmed down to reading, writing, arithmetic, which is really important. But I don't think there's a lot of kids who realize that the toys that they play, there's actually a career that could be made out of that, or the stuff they see on the computer, or clothes and that they see on the TV set or in the film. And I'm just trying to think about how can we try to better engage our children in their education through this. And so whether you had some thoughts about how we can try to make some of those connections more evident, I guess. I know they're there because you talked about them.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm certain you have thoughts on this one, so I'll be quick. But what I can say as a creative, as a mom, and as a professional, and as a fan of what Mattel produces, I think the through line here is storytelling. And I think we as a creative economy underestimate the power of telling the story of what's behind the scenes and behind the scenes of development. I mean, how many of you have been watching this content that we've observed today and felt moved and provoked and wanted to go learn more and share that? So I think there's an opportunity to develop content that can be shared. I know in packaging for Hot Wheels, what we've discussed as we're thinking about the out-of-box experience, we look at the full anatomy of the box. We don't just paint a pretty picture on it. We really look at what is the experience as they open it. And we've played with the idea of grabbing quotes from our toy designers and naming them and putting them in the instructions or putting them on the inside of the box. So I think to just be more courageous to actually say these are the people behind the creative would be one immediate place to start, and then socializing storytelling would be great.
Yeah, I will second that notion. What Gretchen's talking about, I think is exactly right. And so some of for example, some of the things that we do is we have obviously education, but one of the things that we definitely know is that kids learn outside of the classroom almost just as much as they learn in the classroom. So our model is sort of based not just on education, but education, advocacy, and entrepreneurship, because we want to have the full gamut of understanding of context. And I think context is really a very important piece of this. People learn based on how they perceive themselves in life and the things that they're surrounded by every day. So as an education entity, we want to provide ways where we can understand what is that context and teach in that context. So I'll give an example. One of the things that we're planning on doing is starting a basketball league. We're teaching design, but we're starting a basketball league. And the reason why we would do something like that, for example, is that we can start a basketball league, and then we can have the kids of each team design the logo, design the shirts, design the jerseys, and look at the shoes and look at all of that, right? So that's context. They understand what basketball is, right? And then so we're bringing in the world of design into their world, so that now that they understand where they fit into that piece, and that's important. And then it's also being able to show young people that look like them, that are doing things. If you look at the perfect analogy, and I hate to use basketball because, I'm a basketball player, but I got to use it. It's perfect. If you align that with education, you look at it from that standpoint, you have, basketball where you have the tools, and the tools are what? It's the basketball, right? It's the basketball court, and it's access to that. I can go anywhere. I can just buy a basketball. It's cheap, and I can go anywhere, and I can go outside and play at a basketball court, right? That's accessible. And then the teachers come from, coaches, or my father or my friend can just teach me how to play. It's passed down, it's knowledge passed down. So I think of what we're doing as a way of sort of following a similar model where we make sure that we have the exposure. So like with athletes, kids are seeing these athletes on TV, they're successful, they're making good money. And so all of these things combined with tools, accessibility, and visibility becomes the major force behind changing and shaping a young person's mind.
Thank you. Thank you. So what do you find, this is the last question for me, Mr. Woods, what do you find is kind of the greatest challenge reaching the kids that you work with?
I think some of the greatest barriers that I can't talk for everybody, but I know specifically for us, the greatest challenge that we have overall is really sort of getting our message to the parents. It's always like, it's just a battle.
That there are careers in this area, that this is a worthwhile.
It's not even just that, it's just getting it to them. Getting it in front of them is a challenge. And there's so many, if you think about you as an individual, how many times a day are you getting advertised or somebody sending you emails or trying to sell you on something all day?
Right.
And as an organization, we have to find ways where we can fit within a parent's busy schedule to be able to say, this is valuable to you. And without the opportunity of being able to be on TV or have the credence to be like, the same as like LeBron or something like that, right? So I have the responsibility as an executive director that's trying to bring design to communities to develop programming that aligns with kids' lives. And that is, it's a tough thing because, we're trying to connect these values, but we have the hurdle of trying to get into the schools, get through the administrative people, trying to get to the parents, and then trying to get the parents to be accountable when they have tons of other things that they're trying to do to support their families. So that is the task that we're trying to solve, and it's not an easy thing, and especially for us, we're pretty much an all-volunteer team. It's like, I don't get paid to do this. I do this because I love it. I have one part-time assistant, and we try to do what we can, and we work with design practitioners, and we go in the communities, and we're working in school districts now, and finding people that are freelance designers at all, people that have time that can go in the school and give their time to teach. We're trying to reach them, but to answer your question, that is the most difficult thing, is really getting to the parents.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't expect that. It's interesting. Well, really appreciate your participation today. You rooting for the Warriors tonight?
Oh, I am.
Okay. Well, best of luck. Good luck to them. And
The Warriors, man.
yeah, well, Golden State, now they're our only California team left, so we're all going for them now. So appreciate your time and attention. Appreciate all you're doing for young people in our state and around the country, and keeping the arts on their radar screens. And I really do also appreciate your participation today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we'll next hear from Angie Kim, who will talk about investing in creativity. And this is going to be interesting. Angie is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Cultural Innovation. And so she'll be able to give us a different take on today's discussion. So, Angie, let's hear from you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. As you teed up. I'm Angie Kim, President and CEO of the Center for Cultural Innovation. We are a California-based nonprofit. We are a service organization. Our existential purpose in life is to serve artists directly. And we do that three ways. We are a conduit for resources and opportunities to flow directly from private and public funders directly to artists. We also provide professional development. We provide the entrepreneurship training and business skills training for artists to professionalize their careers. And we are also considered to be a keystone part of the overall arts infrastructure. We are a convener, a disseminator of information to policymakers, and we are also a commissioner of primary research on artists and what they need. And it's to that point that I'm here. Right now, we have a partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts on a national study on what has changed in terms of definitions of artists, what's changed in the arts landscape, and the kinds of support artists need today. And the reason why we embarked on this research is that the overall infrastructure of the arts in America is about 2 generations old. And yet, in just the past few years, quite literally just the past 5 years or so, there have been dramatic generational, technological, and demographic changes, and those are keenly felt here in California. So much so that we had to question if our current ways of supporting the arts have kept up. So just to be clear, I cannot actually talk about the research because we're still in the research phase of sense-making of the data. But personally, what I can tell you is what I've observed from numerous convenings across the country, including here in California, extensive literature review, and over dozens of interviews with key experts. What we are concluding, perhaps, without letting too much out of the bag yet, is that we are at an unprecedented moment of valuing and wanting to benefit from creativity in America. This is altogether a tremendously wonderful thing. There is a more expansive appreciation of all those who fit within the term creatives now. That includes a broad spectrum of cultural practice, including studio artists, community-based practitioners, independent designers, and cultural producers. Also, they work across all sectors, and artists always have. They are employed by and thought partners with companies in the commercial sector. They are supported by the nonprofit arts, and increasingly, they are in residence in governments to address civic problems. What this means is that we have arrived at an unusually vibrant, inventive, and creative moment, as a number of people today have addressed. And there is a general recognition by the public of the value of creativity, and there is also a growing, tangible market appetite from non-arts sectors for artists' thinking, skills, and products. This is evidenced by a burgeoning demand by those outside the arts. So take, for instance, in the mental health profession or in corporate leadership training in the financial industry, transportation sector, urban planning, justice, and technology, who are seeking artists. I want to actually provide you a concrete and powerful example of this shift of attention toward the creative sector that's happening in our own backyards, and it's a very powerful example. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to look at the recently released 2015 annual report of the San Francisco Federal Reserve. This document describes for their first time how the Federal Reserve is now institutionally backing arts and culture as a legitimate and needed strategy for community development. They arrived at arts and culture after decades of investments in the built environment, and finally recognize that it is artists and arts organizations within a community who can authentically anchor long-term change. In other words, the arts are what provide the stickiness for interventions to have a desired and lasting impact. But while the demand for creatives and arts organizations is right now growing, ironically, philanthropic support for the arts is trending the other way in California. Against this backdrop of public interest in creativity and emerging market demands by non-arts industries for our impacts, traditional supporters of the arts are either leaving the arts field altogether to support other issue areas, or are restricting their arts support to projects that are for non-arts purposes, with the overall effect of reduced funding for arts. The desire to support the arts to solve social problems is terrific, and there are many artists and arts organizations where that is their sole purpose. but we need both, arguably. We need to support arts organizations where we can appreciate and enjoy the arts, and where artists can develop their practice through commissions and employment. And we need opportunities to train and apply artistic skills and talents to non-arts issues. If we do one without the other, ultimately we will fail to realize the full potential of the arts and artist productivity to make a difference in these new and emerging ways. On behalf of CCI, we appreciate you, our elected leaders, for increasing California Arts Council's budget. It is a huge deal to have such public support for the arts. But at this moment of such tremendous new opportunities for the arts and their impacts, we need more investments to ensure that our arts and culture and creativity industries thrive, not just barely survive, particularly at this moment. For a state that is considered nationally to be a center of this kind of innovation, creativity, entertainment, and the arts, I would say that we are actually underperforming relative to the talent, cultural diversity, and cultural assets that are in this state. It will take supporting California Arts Council to make grants that support both art and arts social impacts. And to do that, I would say arguably that we really still need to increase public support to a level that is commensurate to our population and these opportunities. It will also take supporting our state's humanities. And I want to point your attention to the California Humanities, which does not get a penny of our state funds. In order to support our humanities ensures that our narratives about California are democratically constructed to paint rich and textured stories of who we are today and into the future. This is a moment when we need to make sure that we remain a leader in unfettering creative productivity so that we can meet newly emerging demands for their impacts. And I would urge you to think of this ask not from a needs-based request, but an opportunity-based one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you also for your very interesting work. Could you just kind of give us a story of investment that you've worked on to give us a little bit more of an illustration of how your model works?
Well, so we support artists, and one of the things that we have had support from a funder to do is provide equipment grants. We had an artist who received an equipment grant and used it to buy software and hardware, and he is a data visualization artist. He takes really interesting information, well, it should be more interesting to everyone, about the number of deaths through a war, or the number of gallons of oil pumped in a particular country, et cetera. And he visualizes that in a way that is very compelling to anyone looking at it. The interesting thing about that is he credits that opportunity to be an artist as what led him to then work with another person to develop basically a new software company that has Red Bull as a key client. For them to do data visualization. So in other words, we hear these stories all the time. If you invest in us as an artist, we can take those talents and skills, and those have market value. And yet we're facing a moment right now when we want those impacts, but we're actually not interested, not this group, but there's a climate in which we're disinvesting from the arts.
Mm-hmm. Where do you get the money to these investments?
Private foundations, public funders, including LA County Arts Commission, San Francisco Arts Commission, et cetera. Okay. I actually want to address your question about the Fine Arts Gallery, because we've been looking at that as well. Yeah. And for us, that's a key indicator of the disruption that's been happening technologically and generationally. Fine arts galleries are part of an overall trend that's also happening in the commercial entertainment sector, where there is a less dependence on producers or agents and more on distribution platforms. And so interestingly, fine art gallery numbers are going down, but in their place, we're seeing an emergence of artists working in collectives where they don't actually take on any kind of corporate status, and therefore cutting out the middleman who used to take a cut of their profits. And I want to also point to, there is a statistic right now that about online art sales. So in other words, the distribution platforms, artists are going straight to consumers, and online technology is also one way. In 2013, there was $1.5 million, billion dollars in online art sales. In 2015, just 2 years later, it almost doubled, $3.27 billion in art sales. But what's really interesting about that is 69% of those art sales are for $15,000, for artworks less than $15,000. In other words, there's also this kind of democratization that happens outside of fine arts galleries. So we're alarmed by that also because those are also major cultural conveners, but we're also finding that there's still a huge demand for artists.
Okay, well, that's some promise. That's interesting. Okay, well, love to, if you could share some of that data with us, I'd love
Our
to.
report will be out in fall, and
Oh,
I will
fantastic.
be more than happy to.
Well, please put us on the list.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Really appreciate your time and your insights. All right, we're now going to hear from two different wonderful women who will talk about the creative economy in the context of building STEAM through community-focused programs. And we have Connie Martinez, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Silicon Valley Creates, and apparently is a good friend of the Vice Chair. And then Elizabeth Minoyan, who's founder and director for Society for Cultural Exchange, and also co-founder of the Land Art Generator Initiative, which has some interesting things going on down in Southern California right now. So we'll first hear from you, Ms. Martinez.
So let me check in on time. Are you in a hurry?
I'm okay. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay. Yeah, and you are the last panel, so
Okay. So I'm going to change my remarks a little bit based on the late hour,
Okay,
but
sure.
and a lot of folks shared a lot of what I was going to at least underscore.
Okay.
So what I'd like to do is really talk about bridging the conversation between the STEM and the STEAM within the Silicon Valley context. So starting with, no surprise to probably most of you in the room, is that Silicon Valley culture is unique, just like every other region of the state of California. We're all diverse. And so we bring our own lens to this conversation and the investments we make. So the Silicon Valley lens, we're a scrappy startup culture, male, engineering dominated, and so the STEM, of course, is the dominant investment and conversation when it comes to philanthropic investment. So one of our challenges is how do we connect with the region that we're in and what motivates them to invest, because we all love the arts, and we know, as Gretchen and Maurice so eloquently pointed out, there's a deep connection between technology and the arts and the investments that we make and the public policies that drive those. So I'm going to use 3 programs or initiatives that we're working on as part of this illustration. I only have 3 slides, and so I'll try to walk through this quickly. The first one is a slide about the studio, and this is a program that is targeting teens in Silicon Valley. About 1,400 go through it each year. And what it is that it is a distributed network of digital media studios and curriculum that essentially engages teens at the places where they are. So we go to sometimes inside the schools. We also go to community centers, boys and girls clubs, and we have a relationship with the county with their alternative schools, including juvenile hall. And these kids produce, write, act, film, direct, and produce music videos and short films about subjects they care about. And I wanted you to see their faces because if you can't see them all so up close, but there's joy and excitement and interest in the opportunity that they're given. And this not only builds their skills, which goes to sort of the Silicon Valley investment interest is that it's 21st century skills. They're working with digital media and the kinds of technology, but they're also building the collaborative skills and the creative thinking skills. So in this particular case, Adobe, one of our Silicon Valley companies, they've invested over $1 million in the growth of this program over the last several years. So it's very exciting, and it's one of those examples of how do you bridge that sort of investment and engagement divide between the arts and our so-called geek culture. So the second, let's see if I've got that. The second is a project that is called Imagine VMC. The Valley Medical Center is our public hospital in Santa Clara County, and we have been invited with a cadre of 14 cultural institutions to reimagine their space. It's 300 square feet wing of a public hospital, and we are infusing that wing with arts and creativity by repurposing, reusing exhibitions from our local cultural institutions. They range from the Children's Discovery Museum to the Palo Alto Arts Center to the Tech Museum, History Museum, and in this case, this is a vision of before and after, but this is not the finished product. This is the vision for the future. Our partner for the aquarium inside the lobby will be the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So